Hi, and welcome to A Victorious Life and Outreach Teaching Ministry located here in the beautiful city of Roses, Tyler, Texas. I'm your host, Lori Stimson Ortega, and as always, we want to say thank you for allowing us to come into your homes by way of Sudden Link Media. This is our 12th year of television ministry, but since I've switched networks, I've met a lot of different people when they ask, how long have you been on TV? And when I say, well, this is my 12th year, they're like, what? Where were you? And I've never seen the show. It's because we switched networks. We were formerly on VPN Broadcasting, which was on channel 18. So again, we're glad that you have tuned in to watch us. I do, Mr. Cameraman, while I don't have any, I have one really big announcement. I want to preface that announcement by saying this. I want to send a shout out. Do people still say shout outs? Okay. I want to send a shout out to several people. First of all, I'd like to send a shout out to two of my close friends for their belated birthdays. I didn't get to say happy birthday to them. That is Tamisha Shoemake and Suzette Chalk, 2 February birthdays. So I want to say happy belated birthdays to those 2 ladies. And just on television, I told them happy birthday in person, Mr. Cameraman, but there's something about hearing your name, getting shouts out. So we want to say that. And the second thing I'd like to say is every 2 or 3 months, depending on my schedule, I'm able to take classes, cooking demo classes at the Sweet Gourmet. Is that French Quarter, right across the street by the old Sportster? It's by, and I'm dating myself now, by the, Jarrett Jeweler in that shopping center. And about 2 Thursdays ago, I went in to take the French cooking class, of which there are a lot of prep steps in French cooking. I don't think I'll master that because I choose not to, not because I can't. But I was able to, the owner, Pam, said, hey, I watched the show, and I enjoyed it. So I want to send a shout out to Pam, owner of Sweet Gourmet, and to encourage anybody that wants to know how to cook better and learn different techniques, go on their website and sign up for some of their cooking demo classes. Now there is a charge to it, but check out the website. You'll their website has way more than our website, which leads to this. I'm still waiting. It's still under construction, but we're just pray with us in that matter. Can we say that, Mr. Cameraman? So that's that. And now to the pop-up Bible study. We had a grand old time at La Madelaine's for the our first pop-up Bible study session, where we talked about keeping it real in a fake world. And I know sometimes people will say, that's just a little, that's kind of the way you say it is kind of urban, or it's kind of, trendy. But honestly, that's the only way that I could, I think, effectively communicate what we were trying to do. So we want to say thank you to all of those who came out and participated. We want to say thank you to La Madelaine's for accommodating us. And you know what? Because of their hospitality and because of their staff was so friendly, even when I went to set it up and explain what I wanted to do, instead of us popping up at other places, we're going to pop back up at La Madelaine's. So check us out. We'll say next Sunday we'll be at La Madelaine's, 5:30 to 6:30. It's not a what you call a big powwow. It's just a casual Bible study. We'll go from there. I did want to say that if you attend, Mr. Cameron, I think this is just totally different, and it's costing me pretty much one arm. But it's worth it. If you attend all 4 sessions, those individuals who attended the first session, well, I guess I shouldn't advertising now. Okay, because if you missed it, you missed it. So if you didn't sign up for the first session, you are no longer eligible for this CSB Bible. Now this one says She Reads Truth Bible, that to be, put into a drawing to be given away at the end of the four sessions. It's a Bible that's geared towards women, but men, if you win it, you don't have to pick this one. You can get for a man, it'll be just a regular CSB Bible, and it is a $49.99 value. So that's a pretty good gift. Yes, let's hope they keep them on sale. Because when they go to regular price, we're not going to do it anymore. All righty. So without further ado, one more major minor announcement. It's bothering Mr. Cameraman, so please don't edit this out. I do get my nails professionally done, but this morning in my excitement, combination haste and excitement to I tape in my home, and the cameraman is a stickler for being on time. So in my haste to be on time, one of my nails popped off. So for those women out there and a few men who scrutinize over things of a frivolous nature, yes, I do not have a nail on this finger, but we will take care of that as soon as we finish taping. Okay, Mr. Cameron, please do not edit that out. This is East Texas, and every genteel woman wants any apparent flaw. There has to be a reason for the flaw.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. All righty, now let's do this, Mr. Cameraman. Okay, now today's lesson, we're going to talk about hope, and the title for today's lesson is My Hope Has a Name. Or hope has a name. I think when we say my hope has a name, that makes it just a little bit more personal. Now, in front of me is just an average, ordinary box. See, just an average box. And the reason I have this box is because I wanted to just kind of prove a point. And the point that I wanted to prove was, if we look at this box can represent life. Can you see it? Okay, Mr. Cameron? Okay. This box can represent life. And you see how it's pretty much whatever we put inside of it, it's going to be self-contained. It's going to be restricted. There are boundaries. There are parameters because, like with a box, you put stuff in here with the intentions of keeping it. But you know what? There's always an access point, access entry point for every box that's ever made, because if you don't have some type of way to access the inside, either to take something out of and put something in, it's not functioning. So when I saved this box this week because it kind of spoke to me about this particular lesson. Because if this box represents life, then what are we putting in our lives? Does that make sense to you? What are we putting? What are we holding on to? And what does our life, what does it really contain? And there comes a point where, like with today's lesson, you got to start thinking outside of this. This is okay. And honestly, so what came in this was a container of multicolored thread and like a little stitchery kit. And it's the only thing that fit in the box. But what I thought was interesting that you can't see because I pretty much trashed it, inside of it were those tiny little packing pellets so that it wouldn't shift and move around in transit. So it was being protected in transit. But honestly, the box was protection enough, because that thing was wrapped in plastic. Then it had like the little pellets and it was, it's plastic. And then it was inside of this. So while I appreciated the extra attention that the vendor used to secure it, when I got it, I didn't appreciate any of that. Because what I wanted, I just wanted the thread. So I dumped out all of the little pellets, ripped the plastic off, threw that stuff away. And I guess I saved the box just for this purpose. Actually, it was on the table to be recycled. And it was like, wait a minute. So there are times in our lives when, if we say that our life is like a box, we've got to think outside. We've got to understand that sometimes we can fill our lives with things that are really, to us, they're important, but in the long run, they're really irrelevant. And there comes a point where the things that are relevant to us, because it requires us to think outside of this, we don't pursue them. We don't take them, and we don't take the time to say, wait a minute, there's something outside of this that I need to do that's going to take my life in a totally different direction, that's going to help me to be better. And we don't really think about that sometimes. When we don't think about it, we find ourselves falling victim to taking chances, because there's a difference between hope and a chance. So we find ourselves taking a chance, not outside the box, but on the inside of the box, with things that are already, well, I'll take a chance with this. This is going to work for me. And what if we're not careful as believers in Christ, we will fail to realize sometimes, you know what, God wants us to think and move outside of this. He wants us to get and think and move outside of what is considered our norm. What's a good thing, a good Bible story to, the good Bible application is going to take place in John chapter 5. And we're just going to look at verses 1 through 9. And I promise, Mr. Cameron, we're going to finish all of this today. Now, we can, if I say that my hope has a name, or hope has a name, then the question becomes, how can we find hope when we're disillusioned? And I think that's something that we see taking place in our world today. You know, people are becoming disillusioned about life, and they're becoming disillusioned about life because they don't realize life is fickle. You know, life is tricky. You've got to learn how to navigate through life. And it's something you were not, because we were not designed to live, to try to live it on our own and navigate through a lot of this stuff on our own. We need, our hope needs to be in Jesus Christ. Our hope has to be in a supernatural power that's greater than anything that we can see, taste, touch, smell, or hear. And that supernatural power is the source of life that we call God. So God, being the source for all life, plant, human, and animal, when He breathed into us, into man, in Genesis 2:7, then what happened? It said, and man became a living soul. So that breath of God was that source, and continues to be our source for life and living. And if we're not careful, we will become disillusioned about life, and we can lose hope in having and living a good life, and living that abundant and that complete life that Jesus spoke about in John 10:10. We'll lose sight of that because our focus will be on maintaining things inside of our box and not realizing, wait a minute, this is going to take, God wants to take me on an He's trying to give me an out of the box experience. He's trying to take my faith in Him to a whole other level. And when we say that He's trying to take your faith to a whole other level, you know what that really means? That means that He wants you to experience Him from a different aspect, so that your faith in Him will increase. And once your faith begins to increase, then every part of you will increase and improve, spiritually first and then naturally second. So let's turn to John chapter 5, verse 1. And we're going to read verses 1 through 5. and I read the KJV Bible, but it's a pretty simple story for you to follow along in any translation. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. Verse 5, and a certain man was there which had an infirmity 38 years. All right, let's just stop and talk about what I just read. Now, quite possibly, when it says there was a feast of the Jews, now this is what the Bible is not. The scriptures are not going to tell you. You've got to turn and study Jewish history for that on feast days or what have you. But theologians say during this particular feast time, it could have been the feast of the Passover. So that is why Jesus was technically in Jerusalem, because Jesus was basically a small city, small town preacher or minister. So he was in Jerusalem for this really big feast, and one of the biggest feasts that they have there is the feast of the Passover. So he was there for that festival or that feast. And while he was there, maybe en route to wherever he was going, which incidentally was the pool at Bethesda, there was this pool, okay, and it was in Aramaic, it was called Bethesda. Now, what's interesting about the what Bethesda means is a house of compassion, house of healing, house of hope, etc. So it's funny to me that while in Jerusalem, he goes to this place where he should find compassion, mercy, hope, etc. And he finds the opposite of that. The scripture says that he found impotent people. Now, when it speaks about in verse number 3, look at what it says. And in these lay a great multitude of impotent people. So at that place of compassion, mercy, and hope, you had a lot of hopeless people who, for reasons of their own or reasons unknown, they were basically disabled. So you had this, to a certain extent, this centrally located area of disabled people. And when it says impotent people, impotent folk, that means that there were people there who, because of their physical conditions, their physical, mental, or even emotional conditions, they could not help themselves. They were pretty much stifled. They were handicapped, not only from a physical standpoint, and handicapped meaning stalled or halted or prevented to a certain extent. They not only were there's something physically wrong with them, they were also not able to provide naturally for themselves. So that's basically why they went to that pool. So they basically were there because that's where they needed to be. Or, well, let me rephrase that. They were there because, this is going to sound really mean, but the first 1 or 2 people started over there, and 1 or 2 people may have received some, financial compensation in the form of a donation. They may have received a donation. So when they went home and told the people or went wherever, where'd you get this money? Well, I went over there to the, pool at Bethesda, and somebody was passing by and dropped a few coins or shekels in my cup, or handed me, smacked a 20 in my hand. Well, then before you know it, you've got a whole multitude. You've got a whole group of helpless people, helpless individuals that are really relying on the help and the assistance of people who quite possibly have no intentions of continuing the help. So we read about how some kind of way, and see, we don't really think about that. We hear it preached, we hear it taught, but how did this become the honeycomb hideout and the safety net and the security net for people with issues? How did Bethesda become the house of mercy, house of compassion, house of house of hope? How did it become that? And I'm saying that it became known for that because one or two people got help there inadvertently, and before you realized it, they told other people who had issues, and you had a whole section or an entire area of people who had issues at the same place, competing for the same nickel and dime with the same mentality. So that's my first point, Mr. Cameraman. Stop following everyone else. Point number one. And we read again in verses 1 through 5, stop following everyone else. Because here this man is, by the time we get to verse number 6, he's there and he has an infirmity. And infirmity means that he has been, not just sick, but he had some type of paralysis. He had some type of paralysis, some type of serious debilitating disease or debilitating illness to where he could know his physical mobility was limited. So he found himself at this pool, and he just wasn't at this pool for a day, a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years. This man had literally took a chance on his getting better, on his whole life. He had placed in the chance of somebody taking care of him by way of a handout, alms, as they say, or healing. He took a chance, and that's what we want to point out. And for this first the first point, I guess, if we say that my hope has a name, our hope has a name, the first thing you got to realize is that when you want to access what the Lord has for you, and when you want to walk in the promises that the Word has provided you with, the first thing you do is you got to realize you can't follow everybody. You got to stop following everybody. And this is something, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack when I say this, and I hope he doesn't edit this out because I really want this to stay in there. It's kind of like when you go to these revival meetings or these conferences and you go hear different preachers and speakers. Again, I'm not speaking against the giving of offerings. I'm not here to say this because, I want to say thank you to those individuals who donate to this ministry, because we're able to continue to do a lot of things with just donations, large or small. So I'm not speaking against donations and offerings. I'm not speaking against that. But what I had to ask the Lord to help me navigate through was, sometimes when you go and you hear different individuals, and before they sit down, they'll say, the Spirit of the Lord, like during an offering, God is telling me, the Spirit of the Lord is telling me there's 50 people here with $100. Okay, my question has been, if there are 50 people there with $100, if you want, you don't really have to say, to a certain extent, the Spirit is telling me there are 50 people with $100. Just receive one offering and just say, you know what? Those of you who can give $50, we would appreciate it. If 50 people give $50, you'll know that as the speaker, that when the Lord told you there's going to be 50 people here with $50, after they've tallied up how many 50 people gave $50, am I making sense with that? If they tallied it up and it's like, hey, and the finance people say, we were 50 people gave $50. You knew that was the Lord without you trying to do that guilt trip. Like, if it's 50 people, come on. The Lord told me it's 50 people. What happens, Mr. Cameron, if there's 5 people who stands with $50? Can you honestly say that the Lord told you there was 50 people with $50. I'm not speaking for the Lord. I'm simply here to say it's oversights like that sometimes people sitting in the pews, if there was a beautiful sermon that went forth, that could kill it. That could shut it down. And so you have people who will go and they'll say, you know what, other ministers or speakers, they'll say, hey, that worked for that person. So the next time they go speak somewhere, what do you think they're going to say, Mr. Cameraman? I need 50 people with the Lord. Spare the Lord told me there's 100 people here with $50 offerings. And what's happening? That individual is following somebody else. Because if the Lord didn't tell us to do that, he didn't tell us to say it, we probably shouldn't say it, and we probably shouldn't do it. Because anytime he tells us to do something or he tells us to say something, he knows what he knows what the end result is going to be even before it happens. So with this man, verses 1 through 5, look at what he was doing. He just simply followed somebody else. He did not think outside the box. He just basically followed along. And I'm saying that when you feel like you are in a hopeless, helpless situation, that's what you cannot do. You've got to stop simply following everyone else. You've got to stop. You got to realize that there's a difference between chance and hope. Here's a perfect example of chance. Every month or every 2 or 3 months, the lottery systems in a lot of these different states will advertise, this is the largest lottery ever. It's $560 million. It's $400 million. It's $200 million. Okay, so what do you see? Right before, when do they stop? Like at 5 o'clock? We'll say if the cutoff time for buying a ticket is 6 o'clock, from 8 o'clock in the morning until maybe 5:45, you're going to see at whatever convenience or grocery store sells lottery tickets, what are we going to see, Mr. Cameraman? A long line. I've gone to get gas and I've stood behind people who counted pennies to pay for gas. But before they left, well, here's $20. I want 3 pick threes. I want 1 Texas Hold'em or whatever. And I'm thinking, you just counted pennies for basic necessities, right? Does that make sense? I mean, it doesn't make sense, but am I conveying my example? Am I articulating my example? They counted pennies for gas, but they had monies on reserve for the lottery tickets. So you put a bunch of dollar bills for gas and $1 in quarters. But when you went to get your 20, you needed $20 of the dollar lottery tickets, and you pulled out a $20 bill. I was thinking, okay, now if you're going to play the lottery, why not pay the $20 in gas? Because you're guaranteed to get from point A to point B if you put gas in your car, and use whatever side money, if that's your thing, side money to play the lottery. Now, me personally, I don't play the lottery. I don't want to take chances with my money, with my hard-earned money. So the person, after they got those 20 lottery tickets, Mr. Cameron, do you think they went back to their car? No, they stepped to the side and they were just scratching. And the curiosity in me kind of loitered just a little bit to see what they would win. And I even asked them, hey, you got a winner yet? You got a winner? No, none of these were winners. So you literally took a chance and just gave the state of Texas $20. Doesn't it go to the state of Texas? Yeah.
Supposedly the education.
Yeah, you just gave the state of Texas $20, and you gave that store owner a certain percentage of the $20, I'm assuming. And you walked out empty-handed. That's a chance. Okay? Here's another chance. If you can't swim, get out of the water at a pool party. Right? Don't, Mr. Cameron, if there's a pool party and you can't swim, Don't go to the deep end. Another example, Mr. Cameraman, if they're having a barbecue at a lake and they say, hey, let's go out into the boat, and you don't have a life vest, what should you not do, Mr. Cameraman? Don't get in the water. Don't even, if it's one of those little canoes, don't get in the canoe. Because you're taking a chance with what? You're taking a chance with your life. With the lottery situation, what are you taking a chance with? Your money. So this man was taking a chance. Every day that he showed up for 38 years, he was putting his hope and his healing, he was taking a chance. It was turning into a chance. He was there for 38 years. If you've been there for 2 years or a year, we'll give it to him. You're there for 2 years and nothing happens. Why are you continuing to go back? And the reason he continued to go back was because at some point, somebody was sitting there funding his chance. So he was getting a few pennies, a few nickels, a few dimes. That his infirmity, he had allowed his infirmity to turn into his job, into his profession, which leads to my point number 2. Stop making excuses. Because look at what happens in verse number 7. Jesus said, let's look at verse number 6. When Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, will you be made whole? He was asking him, do you want to be better? Okay, do you want to be better? And that's powerful, because if we say, stop following everyone else, and if we say, hey, there's a difference between chance and hope, then let's look at that for a second. I put sometimes people confuse hope with chance. Many times what we count on to provide hope for our desperate situation, is really just a shot in the dark. It's a 1 in a million chance, a 1 in a million wager that's never going to come through. So when we take that chance, instead of us getting the best of our situation, it gets the better of us. And when we take that chance, and instead of us feeling like we're on top of the world, what happens? We slide even deeper into the pit of despair. So again, there comes a point in this walk with Christ where we got to stop following everyone else. When we're looking for hope and seeking hope in a situation, we got to stop following everyone else and stop confusing hope with a chance. Because sometimes when you don't understand that, then you don't fully understand, I'm taking a chance. This is not going to work. This is not going to work. If you're taking a chance and it's based on your rationale, your human reason, and you're in a bad situation, I can tell you right now, it's not going to work for you. But when we say my hope has a name, or hope has a name, when you entrust every part of who you are, every part of what you want to happen, every part of what you believe can happen, when you stop following everyone else, you stop taking a chance and you take who you are, what you believe will happen, what you feel is going to happen, what you trust will happen. When you take every part of that, every part of who you are, and you entrust that, meaning you give it to the Lord, your fear, your anxiety, your nervousness, your anticipation, your that level of expectancy. When you give all of that to the Lord in prayer, and you say, hey, Lord, this is how I feel. This is where I am. And you entrust that to him. You know what happens? He puts you in a situation like he put this man in, where you got to stop making excuses. You got to stop following everyone else. And then you got to stop making excuses. And when you put that in, and when you entrust all those things, every part of who you are, when you lean less on human rationale and human reasoning, and you say, hey, I'm giving this to the Lord. Lord, hey, you come clean with the Lord. You know what? That changes the dynamics. Even before you see the outcome, it changes the dynamics. What it does is you've gone from taking a chance, operating in your own human intellect, human rationale, human reasoning, to, hey, I'm going to have faith. I'm going to have faith. I'm putting my faith in God. So chance and hope are different. What is a chance is a one shot. It's a 1 in a million opportunity, 1 in a million shot. But faith is hope, and hope is faith. Big difference. So like we just read, so when this man who has taken a chance for 38 years, when Jesus sees him, meets him where he is, notice it didn't say the man had to drag himself to where Jesus was going. The man had to catch an Uber to find out where Jesus was. The man had to go on, Facebook and find out what Jesus was saying. He had to go on Instagram. No, it didn't say that. Look at the power of what's really happening that takes place in our lives every day, even when we don't realize it. Jesus shows up where this man is, meaning he met him where he was, met him in his condition, and he says to him, he says, well, hey, you know what? Do you want to be better? Didn't ask the man's name, didn't ask him how much he needed, where he was from, who he hung out with, and how did he get in that situation. Jesus did not care about any of that. He simply asked him, do you want to be better? Okay. And when he asked him, basically, if he wanted to be better, look at what the man started doing. Okay. The man started making excuses. Okay. He made excuses. And what's interesting about that is he basically sidestepped the question. Okay. He sidestepped the question by having an excuse as to why he didn't want to be healed, why he didn't want to be better. Because look at that. Again, he said in verse number 7, the impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool, but while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus did not ask for an explanation. He asked a simple yes, no question. And Mr. Cameraman, I pray that the Lord will help me to articulate what I say now, and anointed with I pray that the power of the anointing will hit the words once I release them from my mouth. When I say this, when God meets us where we are, all he wants is a yes or no response to the question, the $100 million question, will you trust me? That's what he's asking. Do you want to be better? Do you want to be better translates into, do you trust me? Will you trust me? So this man, he asked him, do you want to be better? And this man starts making all these explanations. Jesus doesn't care about, if your finances are out of whack and your life isn't going the way that you want it to go, or you plan for it to go. If your money is out of whack, Jesus isn't asking, well, how much money do you need? He's not asking you, well, what are you going to do to get this money? He's not asking you questions like that. The Spirit always asks you definitive yes, no responses. Do you love me? Yes. Then remember that when Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yes, Lord. What did Jesus say? Then feed my sheep. Jesus wasn't looking for no long, random explanation. When in this walk, when we think outside the box, because really that's what Jesus was asking this man. He was saying, will you be made whole? He was telling that man, in his own way, stop looking around at everyone else. Stop looking at the situation at hand and say to yourself, think outside the box. Yes, I want to be made whole. Yes, I want to be healed. Yes, I want to be better. Yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I want every area of my life to grow. Yes, I want to move up on my job. Yes, I want my family to be complete. Yes, I want everything that the Lord has planned for me. So when Jesus asked that man, would he be made whole? Notice he didn't say, do you want to be healed? And that's important, because he didn't ask him if he wanted to be healed. He asked him if he wanted to be made whole. To be made whole means to be complete. So when Jesus was asking him, do you want to be made whole? That was trumping, do you want to be healed? Because he could be healed and walk and still have a messed up mind, a messed up mentality, still have a lackadaisical attitude. He could still have anger, bitterness, all those things. So when Jesus said, do you want to be made whole? He was asking him, do you want every area of your life to line up? Do you want to experience success in every area of your life? And you know what? It's no different than what he says to us. He doesn't ask us, do you want to be healed? He knows we want to be healed. If you're sick and you have cancer, you have diabetes, you have AIDS, you have a heart disease, and they've given you a certain amount of time, what person, even if you have the flu or a cold, it's uncomfortable. So who would not want to be rid of their, discomfort? Who wouldn't want to be rid of that? So Jesus isn't asking us questions like, do you want to be healed? That makes sense, Mr. Cameraman. If you were sick, you had the flu, and I said, well, do you want to feel better? I automatically know what the answer to that question is. It's going to be a resounding yes. And in some circles, the word yes followed by an expletive, right? So when Jesus didn't waste time. He knew the man and everybody around him wanted to be better. But you know what? He asked the man, do you want to be made whole? Because he knew that healing was not that person's only issue. So when we say that, then look at what the challenge for this man, like it is for us, becomes. Stop making excuses. If there's an area of your life that is not working out, that is not lining up, before you start taking a chance, stop. And if you say, Christ is in my life, first of all, take ownership and stop following the advice of other people. You know, Mr. Cameraman, I don't know why, but I do know why, but I feel compelled to speak to that business owner. Even as this has been at the beginning of, as soon as I started teaching this lesson, I've never approached it this way, but I feel led to say to that business owner whose business appears to be failing, who it's like you've put your livelihood and your life into this and it's not working out. I'm here to say, stop taking chances with your business. Stop taking chances. Stop saying, well, if I do this, this is going to work. If I get this product, this is going to bring in big. Stop doing that. I feel led to say to you, the scripture says, in all thy ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. Acknowledge the Lord. And then Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God and are the called according to his purpose. So to that business owner, who you're like, man, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to file bankruptcy. I'm going to go belly up. I want to speak to you. And I here to say to you, stop taking a chance with your business. If you would humble yourself and you would say, look, Lord, help me. I don't want to go under. I need to earn some money. This is my livelihood. You need direction. And you need instructions from the Lord, but you're not going to get those until you humble yourself. When you stop and you humble yourself, you're taking ownership for the situation, and then walk and stand in faith and stop looking, like we say with this lesson, stop looking to everyone else to be your salvation. Stop looking to everyone else, every what they say, Tom, Dick, and Harry that's coming around saying, you know what, hey, if you get this product, every vendor that's coming your way, you don't have to purchase that product. There's no guarantee that that's going to keep you from going under. You need to entrust your business and every part of who you are to the Lord. And you know what? You do that by stop following everyone else. Stop listening to everybody else's advice and go to the source of all life. And the source for all life is God. And he's operating through his son, Jesus Christ. We have a mediator. Jesus is our mediator. He's our intercessor. He's our middleman. So instead of, well, what do you think? I need to go to this brand strategist. I need to go to this. I need to buy this product. I'm not here to say that brand strategists don't work. I would love to be a brand strategist. I would love to do that. And when people hire people to do that, did you ask the Lord if that's the right person to bring into you or allow access to your business? But when God starts to work in us and we humble ourselves, again, to that business owner, and it applies to anybody who's listening, but to that business owner in particular, when you entrust your business to the Lord and entrust every part of who you are, then what do you got to do? The first thing you got to do is stop following everyone else. Then you got to stop making excuses. Well, Lord, I've done all that I can do. Well, you know what? That's probably why you're in that situation, because you were operating on autopilot. You know, you were just flying like this and flying by the seat of your pants, because Jesus asked us the same question. He's not asking us, do we want our finances healed? Do we want our bad attitudes healed? No, he asked us, like he asked this man, do you want to be whole? Do you want to be complete? So when Jesus asked that man, again, if he wanted to be whole, if he wanted to be complete, you know what he was asking him to do? Think outside the box. He was asking him, get outside of your norm. Stop looking at all these people. You know, stop judging and basing how you live your life based on how other people live theirs. Write your own definition of success. Write your own personal mission statement. But make sure that when you're writing your own personal mission statement and your own definition for success, that you acknowledge the Lord and make sure, now, Lord, this is what I want. Write it on a little card. This is what I want. But I'm going to trust that if it's anything on here that you don't want for me, reveal that to me and I'll let it go. Reveal that to me and I'll walk away. So when you, again, going back to verse number 7, this man was making an excuse. He was sidestepping why he didn't want to be healed. Okay. Now, when you think about that, the life application questions becomes for us in 2018, you know, what areas of your life have you been making excuses for instead of demonstrating faith? You know, well, I don't have time to get into that argument right there, Miss Cameron. He's rubbing off on me, y'all. He's making me think. Television. You know, so again, what areas of your life have you been making excuses for not walking in faith? You know, that's something that you only you can answer that. And if we ask you what areas of your life have you been, you know, you making excuses instead of, you know, standing on the word of God and demonstrating your faith, then what steps do you need to take to realign your trust, to get your to get your life back in order? What steps do you need to take in order for you to do that from a spiritual standpoint? You know, I say this all the time. I shake my, you know, every once in a while I shake my friendship tree. Whoever falls off, they fall off, you know, and I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean that there comes a point where, you know, when you shake your friendship tree, some people, they take more than they give. You know, they take from you more than they give to you. If a person is always on the receiving end, if your friends are always on the receiving end of you, then they may not be your friends, right, Mr. Cameron? If they're always asking you for things and they can never say, hey, you know what, I want to help, I want to do this, or they're not, hey, I did this for you. You know, you might want to rethink that. You know, because friendship is joint, and there's that commonality of shared and liked interests and all that. And when you think about it, again, if the question is, what excuses are you making instead of demonstrating your faith, and what steps do you need to take to get to realign or to get back to that, then, you know, it's going to require you to do some serious soul searching. You know, if your business, we'll say, is going belly up, if your business, you know, you're not earning profits or anything like that the way that you need to, then instead of blaming, well, you know, people don't buy anymore, or I waited too late to get out. Wait a minute. If you have Christ in your life, and if that's the direction that he wanted you to go, then if he led you into the business, then it's a matter of you stopping making excuses and saying, hey, you know what, Lord, look, you created this opportunity for me, but somewhere I got off track. Help me to get off track. Show me what I need to do. There are times when the Lord will basically say to people, I've known business owners, he said to them, you know what, it's time to let it go. I've got something else planned. And you know what, they'll make excuses and hang on to it because they too afraid to step out of the box, worried about your business went belly up. Perfect example of this, Miss Cameron. I know they're gonna lose viewership behind what I say. You know, when churches are not thriving and growing, if you're not getting new members, if people aren't being won to the kingdom, what is that church doing? It's dying. It's dying a slow, painful death. And sometimes people, pastors and leaders, instead of them saying, you know what, Lord, this is not what you have planned for me, they'll hang on and run the ship aground, worried about what other people in ministry are going to think about them. What are people, if I give this church up now, if I walk away now, people are going to say he's a quitter. People are going to say she's a quitter. Who cares what people think? That is your spiritual livelihood. And we see that. So again, sometimes it's not just, it's not just the individual. When you see your life is going out of whack or your life feels like it's going amok, can I use this example? How am I looking on time?
You got about 6 minutes.
Personally, I shared this with the cameraman. If I'm in a physical grocery store, I'm going to spend way more money than I should. I've spent, on groceries every $300 because I'm what you call a sporadic, spontaneous. Oh, yeah, I can cook that. I may be the only one in the house that likes the taste of it. I spend all this money, $300. Well, you know what? Some women at work, Summer Tilson and Amy Anderson, were talking about online grocery ordering. And I said, well, you know what? I had a lot of stuff to do that weekend. Yeah, I'll try it. Best thing ever. Because I was able to sit there, click on what I needed, plan out my meals, and I spent, whereas I would spend $320, guess how much money I spent, Mr. Cameraman? Because I did not physically see the stuff. I spent $116. I'm hooked for life. Long as I got internet, I'm good. So my point is, that's something that I had to realize. When I saw that I spent $116 and all the food was eaten, and that was 2 weeks, I had to go to myself and I had to repent to the Lord and say, you know what? I'm sorry I was not a good steward over that 200 and whatever extra dollars. I'm sorry that I was out here, just buying unnecessary stuff. And that's what I'm saying. You got to reach that point where you got to look at yourself like this man. Jesus didn't ask him for an explanation. You've got to look at yourself and you've got to say, you know what? Lord, I need to be made whole. My money is out of whack. I need to be whole, because when your money's out of whack, mentally you're not operating 100%. Emotionally, you're not operating physically. So, hey, come clean. Look, this isn't working for me, Lord. I need to be made whole. My life needs to be complete. You don't need any excuses. You know who I am. If I'm wrong, forgive me. Help me to be better. Tell me what I need to do. And instead of, again, if we say my hope has a name, Jesus Christ, pray to the Lord, our Lord Jesus Christ, and say, hey, help me in this area. And then finally in verses 8 and 9, what did Jesus say to him? Jesus said, rise, take up thy bed and walk. And look at what happened. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath day. So look at that. My last point, start accepting the extraordinary power of Jesus. Start accepting the power of the Lord. Start accepting that power. Because look at what he gave the explanation, or gave the excuse that Jesus did. He gave that unwarranted excuse, or unwarranted explanation. Jesus didn't even waste no time trying to sift through that. He said, you know what? Get up and walk. Take your bed up. And that's powerful. He told him to take up the very thing that had been holding you down and progress. That's what it said. That's what it meant when he said, take up your bed and walk. He was saying, take up the thing that has been holding you back. You've overcome it. I've given you the power to overcome that. And now walk. Now progress. And then in verse number 9, Jesus didn't care what day it was on, because once again, Jesus wasn't following everybody else. He was an out of the box, innovative thinker. So when we say start accepting, point number 3, start accepting the extraordinary power of Jesus Christ, when, you got to understand that he may ask you, and it may require of you to do something unusual. It may require you to do something that's non-traditional. But you know what? The man had to decide. He had to decide, am I going to sit here for 39 more years, or am I going to try? So that's the $100,000 question. What do you need to be made whole today? Not tomorrow, not yesterday. What do you need to be made whole today? And what do you need? That question, if I say, what do you need to be made whole today? Then that question is really asking you, what do you need for your hope to be restored? What do you need to do for your hope to be restored for him? Because you know what? There comes a point in this walk where you realize, okay, I've got to understand that struggle sometimes is a part of life. But the key is how I respond. How am I going to respond to struggle, to the circumstances that comes my way? Am I going to face them, from a negative standpoint? Am I going to have a negative disposition, or am I going to have hope, and which is technically faith? Like we said earlier, am I going to trust every area, every part of who I am? Am I going to entrust that and to give that to the Lord? Is my hope, am I really going to put my hope and my faith in the Lord, or am I going to keep like this man? Am I going to take a chance? Because you know what? There's in some things we don't have, there should be no margin for error, So we want to close with that by saying that when this man, when Jesus told him, hey, take up your bed and walk, in verse number 9, and immediately when the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked, and he did it on the Sabbath day, that means that he was no longer listening and would follow everybody else, because he would no longer be in that same condition or position. That means from that moment on, he would stop making excuses. And that means at that moment and from that moment on, he would accept the extraordinary power, the healing power, and the holistic power of God that was made manifest in his Son, through his Son, Jesus Christ. So at that moment, that the Word of God triggered the faith that the man had, even though it had been hidden for 38 long years. When Jesus said, take up your bed and walk, I submit to you, the minute that man got up, took up the thing that was holding him down and walked, it was the faith that triggered that man, that helped him to walk. The Word was the catalyst. When Jesus said the command was to get up, walk, live, to progress, to move forward. So when the man heard that, he, at that very moment, he realized, hey, there's hope. And he grabbed hold to hope, which translated his faith. And as Paul Harvey would say, and the rest, that's the rest of the story. Well, you know what? We are all out of time. I enjoyed teaching this lesson immensely. And for those of you who are watching the show at 12 noon, join me tonight for the pop-up Bible study at La Madeleine's, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And as we always say, if you have Christ, you're already a winner. If you have the Spirit of the living God, you can face any challenge life throws your way. You can live a victorious life. God bless you.